veterans living in the United States today. 19 million men and women who've lived extraordinary lives. 19 million stories worth telling. Stories about big wars and small gestures. These are the Americans who witnessed history. These are the wars as seen through their eyes. These are the stories of veterans from World War I, World War II, and the Korean, Vietnam, and Persian Gulf Wars. Each day, we lose 1,500 of those who served, and we lose more of our history as their stories go untold.
Recording those stories is a part of America's history. The entire story will come together when you tell your part of it.
Millions of Americans. Millions of stories. Tell your story. Ask others theirs. There's no story or sacrifice too small.
I urge all Americans, veterans and non-veterans alike, to participate in this very, very important project. Veterans help to shape our nation's future. And only by understanding what they did for us can we truly understand the price of freedom.
Hello, my name is Frank Boring. I am the Director of Oral History at the Michigan Military Preservation Society. We are a nonprofit organization that's building the Michigan Military Air, Land, and Sea Museum at the Gerald R. Ford International Airport. What you've just seen is an excerpt from a promotional film that was put out by the Library of Congress Veterans History Project. The Library of Congress Veterans History Project is an attempt to gather material, oral histories, documents, diaries, letters from all over the country of our veterans. Here at the Michigan Military Museum, we are a partner archive with the Library of Congress. What this means is that all the materials that we gather stay here in Michigan. We identify them, we put them into a database, and we will make them available to future generations to access through our website. What you're about to see is a raw, uncut oral history interview. At some later date, we will actually edit these and make them available through the schools. At this point, you will have an opportunity to see what it's like to have an actual oral history interview. These will be going on each week with a different veteran. We hope you enjoy. Glenn, let's begin with your name, your full name, and where and when were you born?
I'm Glenn TenBrink. I was born where I presently live. I still live in the house where I was born. I bought the farm from Dad after getting home from the military, and a few years later I got married, and then we took over the farm, and Dad moved to town.
So when and where were you born?
I was born in Olive Township, Ottawa County, state of Michigan.
And when?
June 23, 1924.
Wow. Now, you grew up on a farm, as I understand. What was your early schooling like? Did you have elementary school? And
we had to walk 1 mile to the school, just over a mile, and through thick and thin weather of all kinds. And I achieved an 8th grade education, and I was proud enough to pass that. And from there on, I would have had to ride a bicycle or find some means of transportation, a horse. At that time, some kids rode horse. But I would have had to go 5 miles to a high school, which was in Burkillo, Michigan.
Okay. So instead, you just worked with your dad on the farm?
Yes, at that time, Dad was able to get little jobs here and there in order to pay some of the bills, and by the time I was 10 years old, I was walking between the plow handles. As soon as I could hold it up straight enough to plow, that was my job.
Now, do you remember, and how did you hear about Pearl Harbor?
I suppose it was on a radio. Had a radio in the barn, and doing in the chores, or I don't know just what time of the day it was, but I do remember hearing it, and of course everybody was very much concerned, and knew that it very much touched our lives as well.
But in December of 41, you were still underage. You were not eligible to go into the military. Was there any discussion on the part of your father or with you about, well, in a few years I'm going to be 18, I might have to get involved in this? Was there any of that kind of conversation?
Not that I remember
Okay.
a conversation along those lines. Several of the people around me, cousins and so on, got into the draft right away, and I had one cousin, Elmer Griesinger, was killed in the African conflict already.
So you're approaching 18, the war is still going on. When did the war actually affect you? In terms of, you're on the farm and you're working, but what happened to get you involved in the military?
Well, my dad didn't like the idea of me being a soldier, and so he applied for a deferment for the farm. There were men that were getting deferments, and he got 2 deferments, and then he got word that, and a lot of my friends then were in the military. People my age were getting in, and then Dad got another deferment, and then I told him that, Dad, I don't really want another deferment. They're starting to call some of the people that are getting deferments yellow, and that isn't what I want. And my brother-in-law has 1 child then, and I says, let Jer take over the farm and run the farm with you or by himself, so that he doesn't have to leave. And that's what did take place. My brother-in-law run the farm for the next couple of years. I don't know how long he run it.
So did you get a notice in the mail, or did you go and register, or what happened?
Oh, we all had to register when we were 18.
Right.
And I don't remember all the details beyond that.
Had you traveled at all beyond the small little area that you were in before this?
My sister was going with a man that was in the Army, and she asked me to go with her to Little Rock, Arkansas, and I remember the trip quite well, and that was to a military base there.
Oh, okay.
And he had a hotel room rented for us when we arrived. We went down there by bus. That was my biggest travel.
Okay, up to
prior
that
to
point.
military service. Yeah.
So walk us through the actual process then. You got a notice of some kind that you're drafted. Army, right?
Yeah.
Uncle Sam wants you.
Yes.
Where did you go? I mean, you left the farm and went where?
I went to Detroit for a physical.
Okay.
Went through the lines, marching in the line of Bear and Naked Men. One of the things that you probably don't hear about in the normal is all the bigger guys that was in the lineup. The biggest, huskiest guys were the ones that were passing out as soon as they got near a needle. We had quite a laugh about that.
Yeah.
But,
that's right, you're getting all these shots. And,
oh, yes.
yeah, sure.
Yeah. But I seen at least 3 or 4 guys go whop on the floor, passed out. But,
so once you got processed in Detroit, where did you go?
Then I went back home, and I think I was home for 10 days, 15 days, and then I went to the Armory in Grand Haven, and we got on the bus, and we wound up at Fort Sheridan, Illinois.
Now, you're still in civilian clothes, right?
Yes, we're
Okay.
in civilian clothes.
You get off the bus at Fort Sheridan. What was Fort Sheridan like? Give me an idea. What am I seeing when I got off the bus?
You see a couple of grumpy sergeants hollering at you, and they were, I think probably the incident that stands out for me is you were all marched into a barber shop. And I remember very clearly a young fellow with a beautiful big head of kind of reddish hair. And we were all sitting here in rows waiting for that haircut. And this barber, so-called barber anyway, I don't know what he did before he got in there, but it wasn't no barber. He came from the back of this kid's hair, and he came one pass right down the center. Now, where do I go from here, he said, and just a roar of all the fellows that was in that room. But
So they pretty much shaved you down to...
oh yeah, we was down to a
cut.
1/4 of an inch of hair.
Oh my goodness,
Yeah.
my goodness. Was Fort Sheridan a big place?
Fairly large. I think it's probably within a mile or two of the naval station on the lower part of Lake Michigan.
Was there a lot of activity going on? I mean, I'm picturing like marching, people being marched around, and then there's barracks, and then maybe an American flag somewhere. I mean, what did it look like?
Well, we were marched around from one place to another. That's where we were issued some military clothing.
Okay. All right.
And I suppose we shipped our other stuff back home. I don't remember that
Okay.
detail. I didn't remember shipping it home.
Okay. What was a typical day in basic like? I mean, you got up at what, 10 o'clock in the morning, had some coffee, smoked a couple cigarettes.
We were probably in Fort Sheridan less than 2 weeks.
Oh, okay.
And then
So this wasn't basic then? This was
No,
just
this
like
was
a,
not basic.
Okay, this was kind of like a
we were just, it was just an assembly station.
okay.
There was several barracks there. I remember very little about the barracks.
Okay.
But then I was shipped to Camp Croft, South Carolina,
Okay.
is where I took my basic training.
Okay. What was that camp like? Was that bigger than?
It was a
Sheridan?
large camp.
Okay.
Had training fields, and we took several long hikes. I remember several of them going up to 20-mile hikes. And
This
again,
is with full packs and
full pack
yeah.
and gear.
Yep.
I became seriously ill one morning, and I could hardly stand up. In fact, I did fall down. And I told the sergeant that I didn't feel well, and went to sick call, and they sent me out of there and says, "You're not sick, get up there, you're just goofing off." But they found out that I had pneumonia, and I was shaking like a leaf. But then I got to have a day off. So,
One day for
Yeah,
pneumonia.
oh yeah.
One day for pneumonia.
Yeah.
What was a typical day like during basic? I mean, you had to get up early in the morning, I take it. There's
Oh, yes.
calisthenics.
Stand inspection, and sergeants be as gruff as they could possibly be, and
So this is really the typical drill sergeant you see in the
Oh,
movies.
yeah.
He's screaming at you, he's yelling at you, he's
Yeah.
telling you you're worthless. And
grabbing the gun out of your hand and things like that.
wow. So in a typical day, then you come out, then you go, I assume, to mess, right, to go eat,
Yeah. Yep.
and then calisthenics. And did you start getting into target practice, things like that?
Did a lot of that.
Okay.
Did quite a bit of rifle range and stuff like that. And being a kid growing up on a farm, did a lot of hunting and so on. This was pleasure.
Okay. All right. So you adapted well to the.
I had high scoring on all the
Okay.
target practice and so on.
Did you have any inkling at this time of where they were going to send you, or where you're going to be an infantryman, or you're going to be in a tank, you're going to be a radio operator? Did you have any idea during that time?
No, it was pretty much, our basic training was pretty much geared for crawling in trenches and digging holes. We dug more foxholes in our training than what we dug after we got over there.
Oh, wow.
And
So basic, I assume basic eventually ended, and was there any kind of a ceremony that says, you're now in the Army?
after I don't remember just how long afterwards, we had to go through, we had several dignitaries, probably legislature people and so on, and we had to all march in order in front of that in large groups and so on. But beyond that,
You had dress uniforms by this time too, then?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So now you actually have the full set of uniforms. What happened after basic? Where did you go from there?
I came home. Our basic training ended the day or two after Christmas. We were on maneuvers at Christmas time, and they brought a piano out and on the back of a truck, and we sat out there and sang songs and so on. I can remember some of the songs quite well yet. And this was, everybody was getting pretty tense by that time because we knew we'd be heading out for.
Did you have any idea whether you're going to the Pacific or Europe? Did you just, at
No.
that point, still no idea where
No,
you're going?
no.
Okay. So you had some home leave. Then
10 days.
10 days. And where'd you go from there?
Fort Meade
Okay. And
in
what was
New Jersey. That was an assembly point for, and from there I guess we went to, I don't even know what the name of that place was where we
Doesn't matter.
assembled to get on the Queen Mary.
Right.
I rode on the Queen Mary.
So by this time you know you're going to Europe.
Oh,
I mean,
yes.
because
Yeah.
if you're on the East Coast, you're going to Europe. If you're on the West Coast, you're
Yeah.
probably going to fight the Japanese. I have talked to a number of veterans who got onto some kind of a craft and went across, and everything from troop ships to, you went over on the Queen Mary.
I went over on the Queen Mary, and I still don't like sausage today. The smell of that English bologna didn't sit good with me.
Oh my gosh. Had you ever been on a ship or a boat?
Nope.
Okay.
No.
How'd your stomach react?
My stomach did real well. I didn't get sick. I
Oh,
had
okay.
even coming home, then everybody got sick,
Yeah.
and there was 5 of us in a room that didn't get sick, and the captain come out and said, "Fellas, will you prepare a little food?"
You're the only ones that could hold it down.
Yeah, yeah, that was quite an experience coming home, but that goes into a whole different category.
Did you experience the zigzagging?
Oh, yes.
Okay, all
Yes.
right. So there was danger of torpedoes. There was danger of.
The old Queen Mary was probably one of the fastest ships on the water. We were in England in 6 days.
Wow.
See, that thing moved, and they'd done a weaving process. It didn't go straight.
Now, if I remember correctly, this was also when you acquired a new watch. Was that on the ship, on the Queen Mary?
No, that was after I got in England.
Oh, okay. Okay. So it wasn't on the Queen Mary then?
No, it wasn't
Oh,
on the
okay.
Queen. That was the night after I got off the Queen.
Okay. So approximately, I'm not looking for exact numbers in any way, but approximately how many people were on the Queen Mary? I mean, we're talking about hundreds or
Thousands.
thousands? Okay.
Yeah, it was packed.
Okay.
We laid in them fold-out bunks, probably 5 high,
Wow.
going over.
So the luxury liner was kind of adapted to
Oh,
become a
definitely.
troop ship.
Definitely.
Okay. All right. All right. So 6 days later, you arrive in England.
Yeah.
What was your first reaction to this new country?
You didn't see no country. You were herded into a large building, and everything was under blackout conditions. Not a spark of light was allowed. You went through 2 doors in order to get to where you was going for everything. Is this where we should put in the blanket deal?
Sure.
They asked for volunteers to go to a warehouse somewhere. It was total darkness, and 3 of us went and got blankets, arms full of blankets, and we went, then came back through the doors that we needed to get to the men that were waiting for the blankets, and I took one blanket and shook it out, and out rolled a military bull of a watch.
Wow.
And I do not, the sad part of it is I don't remember what happened to it.
Oh.
But I sent my old watch home That Bulova watch got me in trouble a couple of times because it had a fluorescent dial.
What part of England were you in? I missed that.
Well, I'm not sure.
Okay, but it wasn't London or anything like that. It was Liverpool or?
I think it's probably Liverpool. The
Okay.
Queen could only go in a few places.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too, because that was a large seaport. Was
Yeah,
Liverpool.
it was the larger seaport for the Queen and the others to get into.
Okay. Once you were settled in there, where did you go from there?
Well, I don't remember a time schedule.
Okay.
But it was only a few days that we were there, and then we went on a smaller ship, just a boat, I guess, in small groups, and they took us to the coast of France, and I know we climbed up on the boat on rope ladders.
Right.
And they didn't have loading ramp or anything like that.
Right.
We climbed up on boats and climbed down again.
Yeah.
And headed for 40 and 8s.
So the beach had already been secured.
Yes, the beach in that
D-Day
area.
had already occurred.
See, this was getting into probably near the end of January, 1945.
Okay. You knew about D-Day. I mean,
Yes,
newspapers,
we knew-
radio.
we
you
knew
knew the
something.
casualties.
Yeah.
You knew all
Yeah.
that. When you arrived there, did you arrive in the daytime or in the nighttime?
When I arrived at where we were going, we were on them 40 and 8s for, I don't know just how many days, but we were herded on there like a bunch of cattle on
Cattle. Yeah.
it. It was packed in there almost,
Yeah.
and we tried burning something to keep a little warm because it was in the very cold part of winter, and they had a bad winter there that year.
Were the people you were with, the soldiers that you were with, were they a mixture of experienced guys, or were you all just, none of you battle trained?
Nobody battle trained.
Okay. So you're all a bunch of new recruits or
Yeah.
draftees, and this is, you're going to be going in with whatever training they gave you. You know how to dig a foxhole, though.
Yeah. Knew how to dig a foxhole and to shoot a gun.
Okay. You got down off of these boats, the rope, I know exactly what you're talking about, and you get into a smaller craft. Was it a landing craft that took you to the beach?
I think we got on the beach from there.
From there,
somehow.
okay, all right. Where did you go from there? I mean, you got to the beach, where'd you go?
We just got on 40 and 8s, and there must have been a train depot right in there somewhere, and we walked from one place to the other. No cars or trucks or anything. We marched considerable mileage and loaded up on 40 and 8s.
And for those that don't know what a 40 and 8 is, you're talking about a big truck.
No, we're talking about an old train.
Oh, okay.
That was the 40 and 8s.
Okay.
The old trains of France.
Ah, okay, all right.
And cattle cars, pretty
Yes,
much.
Okay.
And
In winter?
in winter, very cold winter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So were you in a box-car basically with no
Yes.
seats, just sitting there with a bunch of other guys and crammed in there?
More standing than sitting.
Yeah.
If you found a place to lay down, you was pretty fortunate.
Yeah. Well, where did you end up?
Quite a bit further north. I don't exactly know what the name of the little city was that they used as a dispersal place. But from there we got on, from that, after a little bit of orientation and so on, it was just a rush situation because they had lost so heavily on the Battle of the Bulge.
Let me ask you a couple backtracking questions. One, what rank were you at this point?
PFC when I got overseas.
Okay, so you're private first class.
Yeah.
Were you part of what military designation were you part of? You know, you're part of a patrol, a regiment, a division? I mean, were you part of a...
I was sent, and one of the fellows that I met on the Queen Mary going over was a Charles Terpstra. He passed away about a month ago. And, but we stayed together throughout conflict and into occupation. He was injured by friendly fire, but anyway, by clowning around of some guys, he was injured, and we were separated then for a period of time.
But were you part of because some of the guys that I've talked to were replacements or whatnot, they were just placed with different groups, but...
That's what I was.
Okay.
I was put into I was F Company, 276th Regiment of the 70th Division.
Okay. All right.
And that's the stripe that I wear, and the have 3 battle stripes, and the axe head is our emblem that
Right.
we use for a shoulder patch.
You had mentioned that there was some orientation. I mean, they did kind of brief you on what you're going to... What did they tell you?
Very little, actually. The orientation that I remember very much of was after we got in there and the guys telling us what they had went through so far.
Okay.
Before we left basic training, they said we would get more military training when we got overseas, which we never got. Yeah. We just was pushed right into the conflict.
So let's take your experience. Where were you sent? Where did you actually go?
I went to a little town in France called Oding. There was F Company and E Company were in that little burg. I was probably there a week, not much over a week, when we left that area by truck one morning for attacking Forbach, France.
Okay. So, while you were in the truck, you're all loaded into trucks, right? So
yeah,
you're going
we were
in convoy?
loaded into a regular. Yeah, there was a convoy, probably 10, 15 trucks.
Okay.
We cleaned out them. E Company and F Company were on trucks then.
Okay.
And we were brought to the edge of Forbach. And there was a barrage of artillery start coming in.
Okay, so you're hearing the sounds of battle now.
Oh yes. Well, I heard the sounds of battles quite a bit when we were in Oding.
Okay.
I had to do guard duty, and the shells were going both ways over my head.
You weren't in immediate danger, but you could still hear, and that's just...
Yeah. And then we dove for the ditches and crawled up.
This is wintertime, though. This is snow on the ground.
Yeah,
this is cold.
And it's cold. It's probably 10 degrees or less. And
what were you wearing? What kind of winter clothing did you have?
I probably had a couple layers of khaki stuff on,
Okay.
but we didn't really have like long johns or anything
Okay.
like that. But
All right.
we done some shivering.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest problem that most men had was with their feet.
Yeah.
The shoes were not waterproofed enough, and we'd have wet feet a lot, and trench foot was a...
So this is before they brought in, what do they call them, Mickey Mouse boots?
Yeah.
So you had the precursor to Mickey Mouse boots.
Yeah.
You had the regular boots that were not...
Regular military...
They were not adapted for this kind
with
of
the
weather.
little buckles on top
Yeah.
and straps.
Yeah. We had talked earlier before the interview about the actual weapon that you carried. Tell us about the weapon that you were carrying.
Well, I was a farm boy and was strong enough so they put a BAR in my hands, which weighs quite a bit more than the M1. And
BAR being a Browning automatic rifle.
Yep.
Has a little
legs, but I never used it. Never.
Oh, really?
I don't think I even kept the legs. That's all more to carry.
Wow.
You shouldered it and used it if you had to.
Oh my goodness. So that first encounter where you got off the trucks and you dived into the ditches, you were being shelled, right?
Yes.
This was the German artillery, or was it tanks? Or
I would think it was artillery.
Okay.
Probably the same artillery that was going over my head prior to when we were when we were standing
Yeah.
guard around that
Guard
little
duty.
town of Oding.
Yeah. That first incident then with the shelling coming in, was that pretty much just hunker down and wait until it stops, or was there actually an attack, or what happened?
Oh, the officer in charge told us to keep moving. And we kept moving on up towards this town. And when we got into the edge of town, the corner house right at the edge of town was a evac hospital. They had confiscated it for a hospital, and
American Evac Hospital?
Yeah.
Okay.
there was jeep loads of soldiers being brought in there in every condition. Some of them living and some of them not living.
You're 20 years old.
Yeah, I'm 20 years old.
This is the first time you've seen...
First time I've seen that much blood on human beings. And as we crept up into the town, there was some sniper fire that was coming from ahead of us a ways, and I went up behind a old garage and probably sat there for an hour or more with that sniper until somebody was able to stop that sniper fire. And while I'm sitting there, I'm realizing that I'm toting too much stuff. I couldn't carry along with my BAR and its ammunition and so on. I was loaded. And I looked in my pack. I was pretty much in the clear right there, so I looked in my pack and come out with this Bible that I had received as perfect attendance award in Sunday school.
Oh my goodness.
And I had a New Testament in there as well. And I decided that I just couldn't carry that extra weight. So I wrapped it up in a plastic and stick it under this garage, under the edge of the garage that I was sitting behind. The garage was damaged with artillery or whatever. And the Bible gives a little side story that is always interesting to me, at least. 3 years later, I received it back with a letter from a French girl. She had found the Bible and sent it back to me.
Your address was written in it, I take it?
Yes, I had
Okay.
the address and stuff in the
Okay.
Bible.
Wow.
But that's the Bible.
Wow. Beautiful.
Made it.
This town that you were trying to take, this was a huge effort. It wasn't just your two groups, right?
No, it was, I think there was I think our division was pretty much on this
Okay.
town.
All right.
Because I don't really think there was a tank element that came in, was part of it. But
So
then,
when the snipers were finally silenced, where did you go from there?
well, by the time this battle was dwindling down, at least in that area, this was on a ridge. Now, it might have even had a different burg name to it, that ridge. But that evening, as it grew dusk, we went down through a ravine or a valley into the edge of the living area of Forbach, France. And we went into a home there. There were French people in the home. And we made ourselves as little obvious as we could. I don't know how many squads or how many people, but our squad went into this one house.
What was the reaction to you?
They welcomed us.
Okay.
They was happy we were there, and they were scared, of course. I don't remember how many members there was in that family. There were young children, young people as well as adults in the home. And we were dispersed immediately to different places to stand guard and to watch over. And there was a machine gun attachment put in with us. They had a machine gun and 3 men, and they set up with the machine gun aimed at a window and with the drapes down. My position was upstairs looking out of a window. I don't know how many hours I stood on that position, but I know I didn't sleep that night. Some of the guys got a little sleep.
But there really was no action that evening. You were just standing guard.
No, there was. They didn't know we were there.
Oh, okay.
The next morning at daybreak, I have not got any other person of my outfit to confirm what I'm saying here, but I was alerted to the sound of footsteps, and I looked out the window, and there was a troop of German soldiers in full dress marching down the street in front of our house, the house that we were in. Either 37 or 41. There was a troop and their officer calling cadence for them to march down that street. And I ran downstairs with my BAR in hand, and I had big intentions. I thought I had to go out there and stop that troop of soldiers. But my sergeant wouldn't let me out the door. He says, then we'll all get killed. Well, I thought that's what we were here for, but anyway, they went on by, and within 2 hours, our house was hit with artillery, or there might have been mortar fire, I don't know, but the corner of the house kind of disappeared. The guys by the machine gun, some of them were injured. The sergeant was thrown across the room against the wall, and he was only with us a few more days after that. He was pretty badly shook up. But nobody got seriously injured by that shelling. We were there that same afternoon. They got a radio call, and they asked for volunteers. Well, our sergeant was one of those guys that liked to volunteer somebody else. But we went with 3 fellows on each side of this tank, one walking along the street, and there was a lot of gunfire, and there was German soldiers running to and fro all over the place ahead of us. But the tank boy was pretty sharp, because I know he took out some machine guns that could have mowed us all down. Yeah. But all 6 of us made it to the end of that street, and as we arrived at the end of that street, there was artillery coming in, and the tank made a very quick reverse, and we dove into homes and houses on the end of that street.
This street, though, because of the battle and all that, the houses were war damaged in various ways. I mean,
not very much.
Really?
Not at that time.
Huh.
He tore up a couple of them by firing into them with that tank.
Right.
But when we got a little bit further, then there was some bombing out.
Okay.
I have some pictures in the other, in another book here of the house that I dove into. I was back there in 1995 with an element from our division, and we toured some of the area that we were in combat, and anyway, we were in a restaurant, and everybody was looking at a picture. I was sitting the wrong angle to see the picture, so I walked over there, and it just came out. I said, I know this place. And then the guy, one of the guys there says, what do you mean you know this place? I says, I've been in this house before. Because I knew that by the little windows that were a row across the top of the house. I had looked out those windows and saw the tank that was firing at us. But as we dove into that door, the door of that house, I dove in there, and several other guys did. And I dropped in behind a portion of wall that was there, and another fellow, I don't know his name, fell against me, and a shell exploded right outside of our door, and he was swept up those steps, and he came down with his legs coming down like a snake. I'm sure he had amputation. So and then this Charles Terpstra that I mentioned before, and I went up the stairs of that house to see what we could see, and we seen a lot of German activity ahead of us, beyond, a little bit beyond us, and we saw that tank that had fired at us.
Was it one of those big Tiger tanks, or was it a smaller, lighter tank?
It wasn't the biggest tanks.
Okay.
I couldn't, it was probably a block and a half from us. And we didn't get close to the windows because I think we would have been blown away if we was.
Sure.
But we were able then to get a hold of a radio and direct the fire, and the tank was knocked out at the third or fourth shell that the artillery fired into there. First one missed it by about 100 yards. Next one come in a lot closer, and I think it was the third shell that put the tank out of action.
What about the German soldiers themselves? Were they scattered around? You could see them
I
running
could see
around?
them running back and
Yeah.
forth. Ahead, they were within range for a good marksman. Probably 200-300 yards away that I seen them from them upstairs windows.
So how was the conclusion of that particular battle? The tank was destroyed, the Germans, did they leave,
Well,
or what happened?
By that night, we were gotten out of that house and moved forward. I don't know how many homes, but then there had been bombing in that area sometime prior to us being there. And we got a little bit of sleep then in another house across the street. And the next day, or maybe it was 2 days, I'm not even sure just how that all went. But then we were moved forward and cleaned out, took several prisoners, and because I could talk a little bit of Dutch, I was able to communicate with them enough, so I got to bring prisoners back to a assembly area.
Were these prisoners your age? What were the general age
They
group?
seemed to be primarily about our age,
Okay.
or younger. They had kids in there that were pretty young.
Well, I was just going to say, because at least the story is, as you got more and more into Germany, their older people and young kids were being captured.
They knew that in one of those homes where we walked down that street, I didn't go into it and see it myself, but they found some kids that was 12 to 14 years old dead by a machine gun that tank had fired at.
But these were Germans in uniform that were 12, 14?
They had a uniform on, or
Oh,
a part of
wow.
one, at least.
Wow.
Yeah.
When you would take the prisoners, and were you interrogating them? Were you asking them questions, or you just took them?
We just brought them back to an assembly point,
Okay.
and they took it from there. We just did that a couple times. Prisoners were surrendering pretty easily.
Okay.
We didn't have to hold a gun on them or anything. I don't believe we had to. Some people thought they had to, but
Yeah, they'd given up. They
had given up. They were beat.
Give me an idea of the scope of this. I mean, you're going back and forth from the line. You're bringing prisoners back. Was there a lot of activity around you? I mean, were there trucks going this way and jeeps going that way and tanks? Or
Not on the particular street that we went right back up that same street that we came down.
Okay.
And I don't remember how far, probably less than a half a mile that we
Okay.
brought them back.
Okay.
And from there, some other units were taking them from there, or that they had a house or something that they kept them in. Probably our soldiers were kept in a church, our people that was prisoners. And we were able to, I wasn't there, but as we went through that town, they found one church that had 20 or 30 of our
American
men,
prisoners of war,
and
yeah.
we were able to rescue
Rescue them, yeah, good.
them. Yeah.
Where did you go next? You were moving forward, right? You just
We moved on through the city of Forbach, And there was some large factories in there, and there was battles over some of those factories. I was not engaged in one of those battles. We were pretty much on that back corner there, securing that railroad track area. If you hear any writings about the 70th Division combat in Forbach, there's a lot about a railroad track. And a lot of men were killed in that place near the railroad. Several people have written something about that. And we were right on the edge of that railroad by the time we got to the end of that street. And I don't know, beyond that, I don't know much.
Okay.
I heard one young child, he couldn't have been very old because he was injured close to where I was after we crossed that street, and that was dark at night. And the mother, he was crying for his mother, and I wanted to go out and see if I could help him, but they wouldn't let me do that either. But as we moved out from there, we marched then for quite a ways. There had been a lot of combat during the night and into the next day. And as we walked, there was a lot of tanks and jeeps and German military stuff. The street was so cluttered, you had got down to a pretty narrow path by places. And this is part of a story that I add into it. There was one spot quite narrow, and there was a dead German soldier laying in that right across. And I would say that at least from 300 to 500 men stepped over this dead soldier laying there. And evidently I was near the back end of that line of soldiers marching through there, but somehow I turned around and somehow my eye caught there had been a lot of combat during the night and into the next day. And as we walked, there was a lot of tanks and jeeps and German military stuff. The street was so cluttered, you had got down to a pretty narrow path by places. And this is part of a story that I add into it. There was one spot quite narrow, and there was a dead German soldier laying in that right across. And I would say that at least from 300 to 500 men stepped over this dead soldier laying there. And evidently I was near the back end of that line of soldiers marching through there, but somehow I turned around and somehow my eye caught something moving, and it was that German soldier that we had all stepped over, got up and took off. We had all stepped over his body, and he took off and made tracks and got into some houses there, and we didn't see him again. But I'm pretty sure he didn't get any shots fired at him, because I just happened to catch that movement. And then we got to the edge of the town, and we sat there probably for a couple of days. I do know one little detail there that I was not proud of, and I still am not. The liquor ration caught up with our company. And if we would have been attacked that night, we would have been in deep trouble, because there was not much soldiering going on.
You were under a lot of stress.
Yes.
You've seen a lot of horrible damage to humans and buildings, so I don't blame you for getting crocked.
Yeah. Well, I didn't, the liquor still didn't appeal to me at all.
Oh,
And,
okay.
I didn't, I don't know who got it, but I didn't drink it. In that incident, in that time, there was another young fellow there of the same belief and so on that I had. We got to be real good friends in them couple days there. And as we moved out the next day, going out of the city of Forbach, there had been considerable battle prior to me arriving there, and there was a large either house or castle on the edge of town that had been well equipped with soldiers and guns, and we lost several men trying to approach this particular house. And anyway, evidently my friend that I had met a couple days before, he was from Chino Valley, California, and we had made plans about, you know, that we was going to see each other after the war, and because we were both farmer-oriented guys, and but he was killed in that battle. I never saw him again. We knew each other for a couple days, and that was it.
Where did you, eventually the castle or the large house was taken?
Yeah, we took several prisoners. Somebody else, they asked for volunteers to take prisoner back, and I wasn't anywhere near there at that time. But a young fellow said he'd take them back, and well, I'm not proud of this one, but we heard a volley of shots, and he came back, and he says they tried to get away. So I know that he had shot those prisoners.
Who was in charge of your group?
Well, there was an officer. The names changed because of injuries and killed in action. I don't really know who was actually in charge by the time we got there.
Okay.
But from that point on, we didn't know what sleep was for the next. We marched from that area for probably 36 to 40 hours without stopping. And then we wound up in the area where there's another set of railroad tracks, and it seemed them railroad tracks got to be defense positions quite easily. Anyway, the officer was a new young man from the States. And after walking into a very dark night, we were out there. I don't know how far we were out, but we expect we were up to 5 miles behind the enemy lines. And the company clerk told this young officer, he says, I don't know what you're doing, but you're way beyond where we're supposed to be. Well, then the officer did listen to him. We turned around, went back, got behind those railroad tracks where this company clerk knew we were supposed to be. And then there was a group of German soldiers or officers standing just a little ways from us, and I could see them silhouetted against the sky. I had my BAR ready, but the officer or the sergeant in charge pushed it down. He says, we'll all get killed if you fire that. I don't know what I was there for, but I didn't use it. And but then throughout that night there was a lot of firing and tracer bullets all over that piece of swamp woods that we were in. And we dug in what we could dig in, probably 6 or 8 inches of depth is all we could get. The next morning there was guys still digging and scratching to try to find something, some of them even walking around, which was very much a no-no. And then there was a tank behind those tracks that would come up. German tank would come up on those tracks and fire into us. I don't know how big a group we was in that woods with. It was very complicated and very mixed up situation at that time. Other companies, we didn't know a lot of the people that was right by us. And one of those shells from that tank fell right in front of a guy 5 feet from me, and he looked like a sieve. There was blood coming out of his back at least 20 places. and I was 5 feet behind him and received shrapnel in my hand and knee and through my foot, with a piece about 3 to 4 inches long sticking through my big toe and through my shoe. And they couldn't get to us until another company came back and broke through to us a day later.
You were surrounded?
We were surrounded for probably 24 to 36 hours that we wouldn't have dared to try to move out.
Did you had some kind of first aid kit though, right? I mean, you must have, did you wrap
I
your...
didn't even look at it. I didn't want to look at it. Just probably opened my pants up enough to see how much blood was coming out of my leg, but I couldn't move nothing on that shoe because it was right through my foot. Then the fellow died within, James Weller was the fellow's name. I asked him his name and where he was from. And I wish I would have gotten his address to contact his parents, because he lived less than 5 minutes after that.
Yeah, the shell hit.
But I was able to crawl up alongside of him and talk to him for a little bit.
So finally another company comes up, they relieve you guys.
Well, they come in there and break through to us.
Oh, okay.
Well, then I was able to crawl back to where a Jeep took us back to that evac hospital.
There were other injured guys with you?
Yeah, there were I guess all the other guys were with me then. We was 6 or 7 of us that was crawled back to where the Jeep took us then to the hospital. I got to sleep between white sheets for one night and sent back up with a size 10 on one foot and a size 14 on the other.
What about something like a shower? A bath?
Didn't see that for a while.
Yeah.
It didn't happen until everything was really, the war moved out ahead of us. After we got from Forbach, we went through that woods area, and somehow, I don't know the full details, I can't really draw a map, we wound up in Saarbrücken, another major city of the French-German coast, division of the two. It's where the Saar River dumps into the Rhine River. That's Saarbrücken.
But was that already taken?
We were there, and there was men lost in the conflict of Saarbrücken, but they was very concerned about the defenses across the river. And I stood guard, or was on that pontoon bridge that they put across to get tanks and stuff across. And fished several bodies out of the river that was floating down that had died in the battle. There was bodies floating down every once in a while.
Was this the area that you're referring to now in France that is going to be honoring your group?
Yes, it will be Forbach, Oding. I wish I knew some of them other towns in there, but I can't recollect right now.
Sure.
But when in '95 we marched in 5 little towns that had markers and emblems and things up honoring the 70th Division that had fought there.
When you were moving through these towns, you mentioned about battles. Sometimes there were skirmishes, sometimes there was bigger, more heated battles. Once the battle was over with, did you just move on, or did you get a chance did the French come out and greet you, or?
They did somewhat in Forbach after we got through. Then we had some contact with people, but not a whole lot.
Okay.
In the process of going through that town, one young French lad, he had partial German uniform on because they forced some of them to be helpers in their combat mission. He came I don't know whether it was because I could communicate a little bit or what, but he came up and he said, I know that this was a factory that we were up against at that time, and there was a machine gun firing out of it. So it was holding everything up for a little bit. And this young fellow, probably 17, 18 years old, I don't know, but he came and said, I know that if you'll give me a hand grenade or a couple of them, I'll stop that machine gun. And then I took him back to one of the men in charge, and I says, I'd like to verify this kid. I says, I believe he'll do what he says he's going to do. And they did give it to him, and in less than 5 minutes, the machine gun was done. He was able to get there and lob a grenade into him and shut that machine gun off. Probably saved the lives of a number of our men.
Possibly including you.
Could be me too, yes. Yeah.
Was there a point in this movement forward where you felt like it was lessening, that there was maybe you were winning, that we were winning?
Well, there was less and less combat. There's one more feature that I would like to bring into this. After the battle by the railroad track and after I was injured and returned, we moved again forward for, I don't know how far we walked, but it was a considerable distance that we walked, 5, 6, 8 miles, 10 miles, I don't know.
Was the weather different by this time?
Prior to, actually, the men that were there and had combat experience before I got there, our outfit got there December 15 or 17, and they had their first taste of real man-to-man combat around the 22nd or 23rd of December. And
but then you moved through these towns.
Then I came, the town of Wingen. We lost a lot of our troops, little town of Wingen. And then when I came as the first replacements to that division.
And that was during...
They had experienced extreme cold weather with a lot of frozen hands and feet and so on.
I guess what I'm trying to get to, though, is as you've gone through these various battles that we've just been talking about, was it within a month? Was it in a couple of months? I mean...
got there in...
December.
The end of January.
Oh, January, all right.
And the battle for Forbach was the last of February and the first couple weeks of March.
So now the weather is improving.
The weather is improving.
Okay,
we were more contending with water and mud than we was with snow.
Okay.
By the 15th of March, I think by the 15th or 18th of March, the battle had pretty much moved out ahead of us. It was the Armored Division were just loading men on and taking off, chasing across the city, across the country of Germany.
So now you're going to be part of the occupation of Germany.
Yeah.
Your group is now physically moving into Germany.
We were assigned to various towns, and each squad really had a little town that we patrolled a little bit, and we would have at least one position that we had to be guarding. We was guarding on the Autobahn bridges and things.
So what town were you in?
We were in several little towns. Okay. The town that our squad was assigned to, I don't even have any idea of the name of the town, but we were the last perimeter, and the Russians were in the next little town.
Oh, wow.
And the Russians kept coming across on our side and stealing cattle and whatever they could. That one farm, they'd butcher a cow there every once in a while. We talked to the people, they'd come and talk to us about it. I says, well, you let us know as soon as you hear any noise. Don't go out there, just come and let us know. And, well, this young girl coming on the yard, and they're there again. And we all grabbed our guns and run out there, but they heard us coming. And the cow was laying dead on the ground. Well, we took a long bike ride. We went to the next town with this young girl and got somebody to butcher that cow out. I would have liked to have had a knife and done it myself. But we ate pretty high on the hog for the next few days. They brought us the front quarter, and we cutting steaks.
Did you mentioned this young girl, was there much interaction with the Germans of the town? I mean, were they coming out in the streets and shopping and getting back to normal?
They was getting back to normal a month after the line moved out in front of us, yeah.
Did you have any interaction? Did you get any impression of what their feelings towards the Americans were? Or was there a sense of fear or friendliness or relief that the Nazis were gone?
Yeah, that's hard to detect only a month after a month or the next couple of months. Probably by 3 months afterwards, then we were assigned. Then my division went home. The 70th Division was shipped out, and I was transferred to the 3rd Division for actual occupational forces.
Okay. What was your impression of the Russians?
Well, we didn't have any amount of personal contact with them, just the incident over the cattle.
Okay.
We saw them, but they were coming from the other way, and they were actually, I don't know how close they was actually stationed to us, but they were confiscating gardens and cattle and so on the side that we were supposed to be protecting.
Yeah.
But we stayed in that town probably a month or more, in them little towns, and then we were guarding places on the Autobahn.
So, how long were you part of the occupation of Germany? How long were you there?
I was occupation for about 1.5 years.
Okay.
And
where were you stationed?
I was stationed at Niederwaldmar Beast Castle.
Okay.
Castle is a major industrial center. When we were there in '95, then Niederwaldmar, during the war, there was quite a gap between Castle and Niederwaldmar. By '95, it was all one big metropolis. And you wouldn't know that very many shells had landed in Castle because it was all built back up.
Yeah.
When we were there in occupation, they picked the fellow that didn't spend too much time with the bottle to drive the guard jeeps, and the other guys had to do the guarding. Driving down through Castle, Germany with that jeep delivering guards to various places, you weaved from one side of the street to the other, whichever building was bombed out. And it was all that was standing as corners of houses and chimneys and things like that, but it had been extremely bombed. And if you went through there early in the morning, there would be people crawling out of windows and stuff all over the place. They were living in the cellars there. One corner, you tried to get around as fast as you could because there was a theater near that corner, and the people that you talked to said there was at least 400 people in that theater when it was bombed, and the stench was, you could hardly stand to get around that corner because it smelled that bad.
What were your duties during the occupation? You said guarding and stuff, but what?
Well, there was a large number of replacements sent in towards the end. Fellows that had been in combat any amount of length of time, and if you had some ability to control people, to guide people into, then you was pretty much put in charge of the groups, and they had to have their training like calisthenics and stuff like that. I was on, usually I called a lot of calisthenics in that time, taking some, I didn't take any 20-mile marches, but we took them on some pretty good walks. One of the incidents that stays high in my mind there is there was two fellows that had been a little more than what they should have had. Anyway, they was doing what they shouldn't do on the fence by the captain's quarters, and the captain said, called me over there and gave me two guys, and he says, now I want you to, these guys got to dig a 6x6 hole right here. Well, it was right on a bank, quite a slope bank. Well, they dug their holes and they was pitching that dirt, you know, and throwing it down that hill and throwing it down that hill, and they got their 6x6s dug, and he went over there and threw a cigarette butt in there, and now fill them up and make sure they're nice and level with the rest of the ground here. So they had to walk way down the hill and pick up that sand that they throw down the hill.
Oh my gosh.
And that's the town where some of the kids that I met in 95 recognized me, and I was in a couple of their homes. Now they weren't 15 anymore. They were about 60-year-old women by the time I got back there.
Yeah.
And
overall, what was your impression of your experience during the occupation of Germany?
That's a hard question to answer because all your thoughts were is how can I get out of here for a little while, and I took everything that was offered. I went to they had classes at one town. I took that, was there for a short time, and that's
classes in what?
They had agriculture classes. That was the interesting one, and different school.
Are these American schools?
Yeah, it was teaching at one of the main depots areas, and after about the third day, the guy that was supposed to be trying to instruct us, he says, Glenn, you need to be up here because you know a whole lot more about farming than I do. He was reading it out of a book, and I had lived it.
Yeah. Were you counting your points? I mean, is that how you were going to finally get out?
Yeah. And that was where it would have been an advantage to me if I could have got the Purple Heart that I had coming. But they couldn't, the records got lost.
Yeah. So what was your impression of the German people in the occupied, while you were there during the occupied?
Well, they're an industrious people. You didn't see men doing a lot of working. The women were with their little carts going out to the woods or to their gardens and pulling them by hand. Wow. Women and the children were doing the gardening and so on.
You think because the men were still either prisoners of war or
I think
dead?
A lot of the men were gone.
Yeah.
We confiscated homes, of course. There's an apartment house that we had, that I lived in for my period of time there in Niederwelmar. The house across the street there was a family there, and Sieglinde came and got my washing for her grandmother to do, and then I asked her once, that would be my birthday in June of 1945, I asked her once, can you bake me a cake? Can you get Grandma to bake me a cake? So I got some sugar and flour from the cafeteria, and she baked me a kuchen.
Wow.
Yeah, and so I got to talk. The grandma's name was Willie Hiet. Her husband was killed as a military officer, and but
they were friendly to you, I take it.
They were very friendly to us, and we didn't have. I don't never heard of any incident where there was any arguing or fighting.
Yeah, it was different with the Russians, though. I mean, that's something that's come
Yeah.
out after the war. Did you hear about or know about any of that?
No,
Okay.
we didn't get in contact with any
Right.
of that.
So, was there a point where either your points were coming up or else things were winding down when you knew you were finally going to be able to go home?
Yeah, I got out of there every time that every time
Sure.
they posted something that I could get that school time. And then they offered ski school. So I went up into the Alps and learned to ski.
Oh my goodness.
And that was the best food that we could get, I'll tell you that. Before we even left the 70th Division, I had a 3-day pass, and we went into Netherlands and was there for the 3 days. I never seen more whipped cream in bowls full of whipped cream than what was in the Netherlands. And the guys dug into it pretty heavy too.
So finally, looked like it's over with.
Yeah.
Were you in Germany when VJ Day happened, when the victory in Japan?
Yes, I was. No, I was not in Germany. I happened to be on another one of my getaways,
Right.
and I was in Paris, France.
Oh my goodness.
Yep.
What was Paris, France like when VJ Day was announced?
Very jubilant. Very, very jubilant. Wow. It was an exciting town.
So the town just
Exploded.
exploded. It was
Yeah.
just, people were happy. It's finally over with.
Dancing in the streets and yeah. I happened to be in for a 4-day pass, I guess,
Wow.
and that was quite an experience.
It's interesting for a farm boy who hasn't seen very much. You did take advantage of all these opportunities to see
took
places. That's great.
Every possibility that I could.
Yeah.
I took off, and
Were you communicating by letter with family, or was there a sweetheart at that time?
I probably got 50% of the mail for the squad that was around me.
Really?
I wrote 5-6 letters a day.
Wow.
And,
To who?
well, a few girlfriends from back home and a few and parents. I've still got letters of each that I retain, and I think they're kind of precious, of each of my grandmothers who were
good.
quite aged at that time.
Yeah.
And yeah.
So finally, did you get like a notice? They said, Glenn, it's time for you to go home. Did that happen?
Well, that's about the way it happened. You
Okay.
just got notification, they'd send it down through headquarters that you're going home, and you'd probably know it 1 or 2 days ahead.
So what was the process of getting back home?
We all went down to Bremerhaven, Germany, and our process there was stand in line for food. The lines were between a half and a mile long. You got your breakfast, and that was usually scrambled eggs or whatever they could throw together, and you went and washed your mess kit out and put it back on your hip and went back in line so you'd get another meal later, because you stood in line all day long.
Wow.
That was
Just so many people.
It was just, but then we came home on, they had a lot of small victory ships that we were loaded onto, and they loaded them, I think they loaded them beyond capacity sometimes. But
Where did you arrive in the States? What harbor did you come into?
went right past the Statue of Liberty.
Oh,
Good sight.
Glenn, that had to be a moment. That
It
had
was,
to be an
it
amazing
was.
moment.
It was for a few of us. We got about halfway back with this little victory ship and run into a severe storm. And everybody on the ship was pretty much incapacitated. And the captain came in where 5 of us were sitting, talking, and well, it's good to see faces with a little smile on you. He said, would you guys try to prepare a little food for us? So we went down to the galley, and well, one of the guys, he showed us where this was and where that was, and then he had to get back up because even a lot of his crew was sick. Because that was you was looking down into the water, and then you was looking at the sky. It was just that wild. And we prepared some food. I don't know how many people ate any of it. We did. But after a few moments after he left, I seen the guy dump the bag of potatoes into that potato peeler, and I didn't see him no more. So I walked over there and I looked, and there wasn't a potato in there that was over 3/4 of an inch. They had worn down quite a bit by that time, but he was hanging over the rail too. He was sick. So we was like this, the black birds on the line. They was kind of dwindled down to only a few of us left. But we were still in good shape when we got through the harbor, and I would say that at least a third of the men on the ship were laying flat out yet when we went past the Statue of Liberty. They were too sick to look up.
Was there any kind of a reception committee or group of people out on the dock waving at you, or?
Oh, there was a few there, but not like the first ships coming back in. Now this is almost a year and a half after the fact of the war being over. So,
what was your intention upon arriving back? Were you going to stay in the military? You go back to the farm? What were you thinking?
I really had no desire to stay in the military. They had offered, I was told that I should get my teeth work done because I hadn't had anything done prior to service and during service. And they said, you can stay in another month in the Army and we'll take care of it. But otherwise you can apply when you get home. And of course that's what I did. Had a lot of fillings when I got to my own dentist.
Well, let's talk about arriving home. How did you get back to your hometown, first of all?
I believe we came pretty much, we didn't wait around very long. They gave us tickets to get back home, and I think we made somewhat of our own arrangements to get back. And
do your folks know you were coming?
no, they didn't. I came into Holland, Michigan by bus, and I had some relatives there, and I called one of them, and they took me to my home.
So tell me what happened when you got home.
Well, there was a pretty jubilant time.
Yeah. Mom and Dad?
Mom and Dad and 3 sisters. Yeah.
You're in uniform.
Yeah, still had uniform.
You walk in the door.
Walk in the door, and I don't remember a whole lot of detail, but of course it was good to be home.
Yeah. Yeah.
And all in one piece.
Yeah. So we're going to wind this down. I hope we covered the France period in a way that you feel we covered it fairly well, or?
Well, the one little thing that I didn't, I don't know where I would have put it in anyway, but this was after the Forbach and after some of the other combat. We were in a wooded area, and we cut down, there was quite a bit of artillery and so on going on. We cut down several trees and built that was my squad leader and 5 of us guys built a bunker with logs and had big logs and dirt thrown on them. So we had a palace out there compared to most of them. But then the rest of our squad was lined up around a perimeter, and I believe that's what they got on the material. I didn't think it was the proper place for, I was awarded the Purple Heart or the Bronze Star for that action. We had placed some trigger bombs with wires across so that if the enemy tried to slip in on us, they would be triggering off
sure.
some bombs. But anyway, there was, at that place, there was a mine shaft off to probably 150 to 200 yards from us. And out of that mine shaft, the Germans had to set up a gun on one of those mine shaft cars, and that would fire a volley of screaming meanie. They're large cans of powder in a tin can, actually, and they made an awful disturbing noise. It just tear you right apart just to hear them things screaming when you know they're going to blast off. And I think there were 7 of them in each volley. And they wasn't even directed very good straight. They would just spin all over the place. And that would go off every half hour, approximately. But we were there for a while, and then I don't know who did it. I don't know the individuals, but somebody crept up and waited for the vibrations or something and throwed hand grenades down there, and they finally stopped that thing after a week or 10 days. But we did not see Germans, soldiers at that point. We didn't see them, and but we were there for probably over 10 days, 2 weeks that we was in that bunker on that perimeter line. From there we were pulled back, and we took that. That's when we went into Saarbrücken.
Okay. Glenn, I got one more question for you. It's a little bit of a tougher question, but how do you think your military experience shaped the person that you are today?
I think it made us more alert and thankful for freedom, and that we were able to liberate these people of France and eventually some of the other areas of liberation that was involved, and the thankfulness that they show to us today.
But how did that experience, and I don't mean just combat, but just that whole military experience, shape your life when you got back?
Well, I just made a better man out of me, I believe. Always, any farm boy knew what it was to work, but knew you had to get make your own way. You couldn't figure on everybody else handing it to you. I'm afraid there's far too many young people today that figure life has got to be handed on a silver platter. And I don't think you see any veterans that knew what combat was that would come back here and expect a free handout.
You demonstrated part of your character, if you will, your personality, by volunteering to do all these. Did that continue on in your life? Have you traveled a lot? Have you gone to classes since you got back to the States? And
I didn't go to classes, but we have volunteered for a lot of areas of some pretty much through the church. We are strong advocates for international aid. We've been on some of their trips when they went down for flood relief. I will be going there tomorrow, creating up hospital equipment and so on to send to the tsunami area. And created up a lot of stuff that went to Kosovo and to Afghanistan and to the various places. And
well, I thank you very much. I'm glad we got the chance to sit down and talk. This wasn't so bad, was it?
No. I didn't know what to say or how to say it. But,
thank you very much. No,